start with a joke? Is that all right this morning? I don't know. Is that all right? John, you're okay with it? Thanks. Appreciate it, John. Thanks. All right. So one day in the Garden of Eden, Adam calls out to God, Lord, I have a problem. What's the problem, Adam? Lord, you created me and have provided for me all the things that are surrounding me, the beautiful garden and all these amazing animals, but I'm not happy. Why is that, Adam? Lord, you created this place for me and all of this lovely food and these amazing animals, but I'm lonely. Well, Adam, in that case, I've got a perfect solution. A perfect solution. I shall create for you a woman. Get it? Whoa, man. This woman will be the most intelligent, sensitive, caring, and beautiful creature I have ever created. She'll be so intelligent that she can figure out what you want before you want it. She'll be so sensitive and caring that she'll know every mood and how to make you happy at every moment of the day. Her beauty will rival that of the heavens and the earth. She will unquestionably care for you and every need and every desire that you have. She will be perfect, a perfect companion for you. That sounds great. And then Adam goes on to say, what's this going to cost me, God? What? I know it's a long joke, but I'm getting there. It's unfolding. The story is unfolding. You guys are really appreciating it. By the way, congratulations. These guys, they just got married. Yeah. Yeah. So they're totally relating to this right now. God says, she's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Adam ponders for a moment. Looking deep. What would it cost if I just gave up a rib? And the rest is history. Okay, so it wasn't the spare rib, it was the prime rib. Anyway, I do. My wife is amazing. And she is, let me just read. She is intelligent, she's sensitive, she's caring, she's beautiful. She's the most amazing thing that God created. Yes. And it did. Okay. And her rib. Oh, tell you. Ain't no barbecue in that either. Nothing. All right. So, let's go to John chapter 4. And I really, really like this story because it just shows just the goodness and grace of Jesus. But with that too, just as he shares his love and shows his love, just that spirit of wisdom and revelation is just released upon the woman that's at the well. And so today, it's going to be this revelation and fountain of just revival that's going to come today. So I'm excited for what God's doing, and not only in my life, but just the things that we've been able to see as we've been traveling. But we're coming. Yeah, this springtime for here in Madison, it's going to be amazing. And part of it is that as our own hearts are awakened, and then we just allow that light of Jesus just to shine just in our classrooms or in our workplace or in the supermarket or just walking up and down State Street, just watch what begins to happen, because God is up to something amazing and great. And the best part is he wants to use each one of us. And so let's start at verse number 3 in John chapter 4. I'm going to read from the New King James Version today. And he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. But he needed to go through Samaria. I want to read that part again. He needed to go through Samaria. And so he came to the city of Samaria called Sychar, which was near the plot of ground that Jacob had given his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat down at the well. It was about the 6th hour, about noon. A woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Hey, give me something to drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy some food. Then the woman of Samaria said to him, "How is that you, being a Jew, ask me for something to drink, a Samaritan woman? For the Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Jesus answered her and said, "If you knew the gift of God and who it was that says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would ask him if he would give you the living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is very deep. Where then do you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who has given us this well and drank from it himself, as well as his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered and said to her, "Whoever drinks from this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give to him shall never go thirsty. But the water that I shall give him will become in him a fountain of water, springing up into everlasting." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, that I may never thirst, and nor come here to draw." But Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband, tell him to come here." The woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You've said well that you have no husband, for you've had 5 husbands, and the one that you're with right now is not your husband. You've spoken truly." The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshiped on this mountain, and you Jews say that we have to worship in Jerusalem as the place we ought to worship." But Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither worship on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. Worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know. For salvation is of the Jews. But an hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father is seeking such to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that the Messiah is coming, who is called the Christ. And when he comes, he will tell us all things." But Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." At this point, the disciples came back, and they were marveled that he was talking with a woman. Yet no one said anything, like, "What do you seek?" or "Why are you talking with her?" The woman left her water pot and went on her way into the city and said to the men, "Come and see a man who told me all things I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" Then they went out of the city and they came to him. In the meantime, the disciples urged him, saying, "Rabbi, please eat." But he said to them, "I have food to eat which you do not know." Therefore the disciples said to one another, "Has anyone brought him food or anything to eat?" Jesus said to him, "My food is to do the will of the one who sent me and to finish his work. Do not say that there are still 4 months and then comes the harvest. Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields, for they are white already with harvest. And he who reaps receives the wages and gathers the fruit of eternal life." And I'll stop there. But to me, in this story is rather profound when we think about Jesus, that he said, "Here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to go. I actually need to go through Samaria." Now, there was a lot of animosity between the Samaritans and the Jews, and part of it was an age-old thing, because the Samaritans were ones that had remained in the kingdom, and there was a lot of interrelations with other tribes around the region that were not Jewish. And so there was this kind of sense like they were half-breed or less than. And so there was kind of that thought of the mentality. And likewise, the Samaritans kind of had a little angst against the Jews as well. So part of it is that when the Jews would travel to different parts of Israel, they would always avoid Samaria, because they just felt like, we're not going to deal with them, because they're like, And so usually they'd have to go up or across the Jordan and go through, which we now modern-day country of Jordan, then they go up to Galilee, which would take almost like a 3-day journey. But Jesus is saying, I need to go to Samaria. See, part of it is Jesus had this incredible insight because he knew the Father. And to me, that's where the Father was speaking those simple little whispers. And even in the weeks to come, we're going to go into just hearing the voice of God in the prophetic and really just trying to unpack that and really just simplify. But this is one of the greatest examples because Jesus hears something from the Father's heart saying, I have to go. Here, Jesus, I want you to go to and through Samaria because there's an appointment there. A divine appointment. I've got something set up that is just it's going to radically change that whole region of Samaria. And you have to go through, even right now. I know that your time hasn't fully come yet, but I need you to go through there now. And so it was in that awakening of his own heart. And he's like, come on, guys, we're going to go through. And so now, again, his guys would have been offended as well. Like, what? We're not going through Samaria. Jesus? Come on. And yet they always knew that whenever Jesus spoke something or did something, there was life that always followed. And so now they're on this adventure with Jesus and tired and weary from the trip, Jesus sits down at the well because he goes, because there's one of these secret little prayers that Renee and I and others like to pray, but just make this part of your prayer. Lord, what are you doing today and how can I be part of it? And then just watch the divine appointments and interactions that God puts in place. I mean, for every one of us, regardless of how long you've known Jesus or where you're at in your walk with him, if you just pray that dangerous prayer, watch what God does with it. Because that's the prayer that Jesus prayed. I mean, that was his prayer every moment of every day. Father, what are you doing and how can I be part of it? And so the Father says, all right, Jesus, you go sit by the well, send your guys away. So now they're wearied. It says that Jesus was wearied from the trip. Okay, so there again, that's a perfect example of his true humanity. Now, remember, Jesus, his entire journey here on planet Earth was as a man. He never referred to himself as the Son of God. He referred to himself as the Son of Man. He was the Son of God, but he himself came as a man because that was the only way that the fulfillment of you and I ever coming to reconciliation with the Father was through a man. Because a man, Adam, broke it, and now there's a man, Jesus, who's going to restore it. And so he came as a man. So his entire journey here on planet Earth was as a man. And see, that's what when we read the scriptures and we see the things that Jesus did, every one of those things is available for us. And the reality is that he faced no temptation that you and I didn't face. And yet he didn't sin. And part of it, he just had a simple devotion to the Father. He knew that he was loved. He knew that he wasn't forsaken. He knew that he wasn't rejected. He knew who he was as a son of God and as the Son of God. It was inside of him because the Father spoke to him. That even when he was baptized, he comes up out of the water and it says that the heavens peeled open. And the Father spoke, "This is my beloved, most awesome, incredible Son, with whom I'm so pleased with." I mean, think about that. Like the heavens open up and there's this thunderous, glorious, loving voice coming down from heaven. And like all the people heard it. And yet that's where the enemy comes time and time again, even against us, is attacking our identity. But Jesus had this confidence as he stood upon the word of God, that even when he fought Satan in the wilderness, he didn't argue with Satan. He said, "It is written, it is written, it is written. My Father says, it is written, it is written." He just spoke the truth. He didn't argue with Satan once. He didn't have to. And so Jesus sits down at the well. And again, to me, I just liked it because it really does show his humanity. You know, he's weary from the travels. I mean, they just walked a long ways. So he sends his guys into the city to go get some food so that they can have some lunch because it's like noontime now. And so he's sitting there, and all of a sudden, this woman comes. And she's coming to draw water. And he sees her coming and says, "Hey, give me something to drink." Whew. Now, she's taken back, one, that a Jew, I mean, that's the first way she says it first. "Whoa, what are you doing talking to me? You're a Jewish man, and I'm a Samaritan, but not only a Samaritan, I'm a Samaritan woman. And so she just stops for a moment, and Jesus says, no, give me a drink, because I'm thirsty. No, really. And to me, this is the whole thing that I think that God really wants to awaken in all of us, that as we begin to be ones that just demonstrate his love, is that Jesus wasn't there to condemn. Jesus wasn't there to preach. Jesus was there to literally reach out in love. And I love the way that even he starts with a question, just not even a question, but he actually asking for his own needs. Can you just give me something to drink? And really what he was trying to do is, it was an attention getter just to get this woman to start talking. You know, many times when, I think back in the days when we first started doing evangelism after I got saved, because I was just so full of zeal and the fire of the Lord. I got to tell everybody about Jesus, you know what I mean? And I mean, I just would go and we'd be down here on campus and just trying to tell people about, Lord, you got to know this Jesus. And I had some friends, and some of them we just were overzealous. If you don't repent, you're going to go to hell. I mean, you know, like telling people that. No. And it wasn't real effective. No, it really wasn't. I mean, we saw some people, you know, and that's part of it, is that, you know, we scared people into the kingdom rather than love them. We talk about the doom and gloom rather than this amazing man that laid himself out on a cross and said, anyone that comes to me and it's thirsty and is hungry, anyone that longs for the true identity, anyone that just wants to receive the fullness of love and what you're created for, that to me is so much better. And to me, that's what God is doing in this hour. He's revamping everything. And part of it is because he so wants his name to become famous because of love, not because of religion. And it was a simple question that Jesus was just trying to relate with the woman. Just give me something to drink. And then he goes on to say, that whole idea of, if you understood who it was that is sitting before you right now, you'd ask me for something to drink. And she was like, well, I want that. I want that living water. I hear what you're saying, because I don't like coming here. I don't like coming here every day to draw the water pots. And Jesus is saying, no. What I'm talking about right now is not a physical thing. It's a spiritual thing. And he's began to shift the atmosphere and bring it to the reality that this is way beyond the physical drawing of water. This is supernatural water. This is supernatural grace. This is living water that literally, that as you drink from it, it will flow out of you and onto the world that's around you. And their conversation continues on. And Jesus finally goes, hey, call your husband. Now, part of it, Jesus already knew, I think, believed by the Spirit, but the reason that woman came at noontime rather than in the morning or the evening is because she was already so full of guilt and shame and condemnation that the only time that she could go there, because we see even in Africa, in the evening and all of that, when the community comes to get water. And there's like conversation, and that's where they share in their local gossip. Did you see what so-and-so did? Oh, look at the way they carry that pot of water. I'll tell you. But that's the kind of stuff that happens around. And so this lady, already being an outcast, wouldn't even be welcome in those circles in those different times of day. So here she comes in the hot of the day, the heat of the day, to come and get her water. And Jesus knows this. There's something about her. And I believe that she was carrying it more ways than one. I believe that she was downcast. I believe that she was wearing the shame as heavy as it could be. And that even when Jesus said, go call your husband. And she said, I don't have a husband. And Jesus says, that's right. You've had 5 husbands. And the one you're with right now, he's not even your husband. And she was like, whoa, sir, I perceive that you're a prophet. But I believe part of it was in the approach that Jesus came. He didn't come to condemn. See, that's the beauty of Jesus, is he did not come to the earth to condemn the earth, but to save the world. And too often our forms of sharing the gospel become condemnation. And see, Jesus at this moment in time wasn't there to point out her sin. He was just simply saying, I know, I perceive. And more than that, see, the reality in the culture of that day, a woman wasn't the one that divorced the man. A man is the one that always divorced the woman. This woman had been divorced by 5 men. So she had been kicked, abused, rejected by 5 different people. And the one she was living with wasn't even saying, I want to marry. No, I'm just going to use you and abuse you or whatever it might be. He wasn't even willing to marry her. And so she's carrying this rejection and this pain and this guilt. And he begins to speak to saying something. I see something different. No. And he begins to call the gold out of her. Because he spoke in love, not condemnation. See, there's something about grace and truth that sets a heart free. That when we approach seeing how the Father sees and we bring that reality to someone. Because the good news is really to be that. It really is. That's what the gospel means. It means good news. And we've so polluted it with religious methods and ideas, and we add to the reality of just the simplicity of confessing Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. The fact that his blood speaks a better word. The fact that his sacrifice, when he said it was finished, that's what he meant. There's nothing more that you need to add to the reality of his sacrifice. It's a simple confession of believing the reality that Jesus died for us, and we confess our sins. And see, that's what happens when we're apprehended by love. It's like, oh, gosh. And we begin to see how sin not only hurts us, but hurts God's heart. And God just wants to remove it because it becomes a hindrance. It becomes a barrier that keeps us from pressing into the deeper places with him. So that we can really truly see that living water that's available, because that's what he wants. He wants us to come to the pure, to the holy, to that place where we can drink pure water that will set us free, that will allow our hearts to be awakened, that allow the seeds of truth to come to life. And then they get into a conversation just about worship. And she goes, our fathers here, they worship at this mountain, but you Jews have to worship over there. And so she immediately all starts to change things back to this theological argument and debate. And Jesus doesn't argue with her. Basically, he's saying, yeah, your fathers, but I'm here to reveal the Father. And there's a Father that so loves you. And he's so longing to hear your voice. He's so longing to see your face. He's coming because he said there's an hour that's coming and now is. When the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. And see, that's what God is doing. He's awakening a generation that are going to know what it means to worship in spirit and truth, because as we worship in spirit and truth, the chains fall off, the shame falls off, the baggage, the past, any injustice that we've gone through literally no longer defines us. It's separated, it's destroyed, and we're set free so that we can rise up to be all God's called us to be. And see, that's what Jesus was doing as he approached this woman at the well. He's saying, it's all about to change. And from that time forward, it has. And see, that's the reality. That's still the reality today, is that the Father is looking for those that will worship him. Here's the reality that when you feel like God's a long way off and he's a million miles away, just begin to worship. He'll find you. He really will. When God asked the question, Adam, where are you? You think God didn't know? No, it had nothing to do with that. And yet that's where the enemy does so often. He isolates us, pushes us in a corner, puts us behind the veil, tries to hide us in our guilt and in our shame and in our sin. And then we start to believe that that's who we are. And the reality is that that's not who you are. God created you for greatness and created you for an amazing destiny. Every one of us has been marked and set apart. And the enemy works overtime to destroy who you really are. You're created in God's image. And it's interesting to me that now the disciples come back. there's this dialogue, and they're like seeing Jesus talking to a woman. One, it wasn't ever really acceptable for a man to even talk, especially a rabbi, wasn't even able to talk to his wife while walking in the streets. I mean, that's how kind of weird it was. And so the fact that he was sitting at a well next to a woman, not only a woman, but a Samaritan woman, it really was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Yo, Jesus, tell you what you doing over there. Dang. Man. Put that FaceTime Live away, boy. Get me, let's... But they didn't dare ask, like, what's he talking? They didn't even think, like, no, man. I mean, because Jesus, he's always got some plan. You know how he works. Things he says doesn't make sense at the time, but I'll tell you what, we're going to see it one day or another, And so that's the reality. Just right there. Thomas, shh. And then it says that the woman, Jesus finished his conversation, and the woman got up and left her water pot there. And then she cruised into the city. I think part of it is why she left the water pot, one, because Jesus said, hey, can you give me something to drink? So I believe that, she was like, yo, Jesus, you need this more than me. Take a drink, all you want, And part of that's the reality when you get apprehended by just that perfect love. Your desire is just to give. And I believe it was like a sacrificial, just, Jesus, thanks. Thanks for just speaking life into my heart. Thank you for just calling the gold out of me. And this is what I got. I'm just going to leave it here. And as she ran into the city, she just began to communicate. Oh, there's this guy that told me everything about me. Now, he didn't really tell you everything. You have 5 husbands. I've had them. You got one guy you're living with. I mean, that's the only thing we really actually hear, that we see. And maybe there was. Maybe there was some deeper things, and I kind of believe that. I believe that he didn't just talk about that and just about her brokenness and about her rejection, but I believe he began to speak and say, this is me reading between the lines, okay? So you're not going to read this in the scripture, but I believe he began to have this conversation. And he goes, do you know who you really are? Do you know why you were created? You were created for awesomeness. You're so beautiful. Even as a man, darn, you're beautiful. And he just begins to draw the goodness out of her. So that's when I believe her heart was just awakened, and I believe those chains of shame just began to fall off of her. That she was so excited. That's why she ran into the city, saying, "Oh, this guy has told me everything." Remember when you were like 3 years old, and then I'm maybe not, but the point is that he knew her, and he knew her by the Spirit. He knew her by the Father's heart. And see, God knows you, each one. He knows you. And see, I loved it because every now and then I get a little glimpse of how the Father sees people. I don't get to see quite as deep as he does, but I just love it. I love that this whole room here is just full of like world changers and history makers and lovers of God. And then the enemy comes, yeah, but you don't know what I did, man. I don't care what you did. I care who you are. And see, our sin doesn't define us. And see, we so often get wrapped up in that sin and we allow that to define us when it doesn't. We're sinners, past tense, saved by grace. That means we're saved, we're set free. That means we're now saints of God, marked and set apart to do great and mighty things for the King of glory. And God just wants to give us insight into that reality. That the world that's out there, that when you walk into class and you can see people just heavy hands hanging. And you can just see depression on people. And part of it is that you just begin to say, God, would you just begin to give me eyes to see? Begin to give me ears to perceive just the reality of those that I come across their paths today, God? Can you just show me just glimpses of their destiny? Can you just show me glimpses of just even those things that might be holding them back? That I might be able to speak and break those chains? See, there's power in our words. The power in our words break chains. They bring freedom. And every one of us can be used that amazing way. And so now the guys finally come up to Jesus and say, hey, Jesus, we brought you some food, man. I got this sweet chunk of fish And he's like, I've already eaten, man. The meat that I have, woo, I tell you. And they're like, who gave him food? Come on, man. And he goes, my food isn't like even of this world. It's really about just doing the will of my Father. And as you're about the will of the Father, it does something. And, because we travel all over the planet and speak all over the place. And there's something about when you're in that time and just in his presence and you're speaking and ministering. It's like, I can go days without eating if I just kept ministering. But then you stop, everyone like, ooh, gosh, maybe I better eat something now. But there's just something about being in God's presence and when you're just empowered by just doing the Father's will to just break the chains. And I just love this story because now she goes in and tells the community, and all of a sudden the community is coming out to see, like, I'm going to see this guy. I want to hear what he's got to say. Think about her coming into the community. So she's one that's already overlooked and kind of an outcast per se. And she's like, there's this guy. Oh, my gosh. And he told me everything. And you're happy? Let's go see what this is all about. So they make haste. They come out and see this man, Jesus. And it all started from a simple word of knowledge. It all started from just a simple saying, Father, what are you doing today and how can I be part of it? And Jesus just partnering with the reality of the Father. And then as he did that, shame was broken. A person was set free. And this person became a voice in the community in a moment. In a moment. In a moment. I just so love the prophetic and words of knowledge like that, because we've seen it a couple different times. And just one time, Ed Farrington and I were actually in Ghana, and we were just getting ready to leave Ghana. We were at our hotel, and that morning we were just spending some time with the Lord, and we're just kind of praying, and then we just sent this simple prayer. All right, Lord, what are you doing today? How can we be part of it? Where's the divine appointment? And we're like, where's the divine appointment? And so all of a sudden, we're down there at breakfast, and like all the tables are full except for this one table. And so we're getting our food, and we sit down and say, we ask this guy, hey, can we sit next to you? And he's like, yeah, sure, that's fine. So we begin to have conversation with this guy while we're having like breakfast, and we're just doing some simple small talk. All of a sudden, the Lord begins to speak to me, and I get this date, April 3rd, and I'm like, and then I get the wedding, and then I see 4 boys, and I'm like seeing all this stuff. I'm going, all right. So how's this going to fit in our conversation? So then at one point I go, I just need to ask this. Does April 3rd mean anything to you at all? And something with the wife? And he was like, and he stopped for a moment. He goes, yes, that's when my 3rd wife and I got married. Now, it wasn't like his divorced. No, I think he like literally had 3 wives. Okay, he was from Saudi Arabia. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, all right. And then I go, you've got 4 boys. And now he's going, what the heck? And I said, yeah, there's something really with the number 2 boy. And he was like, and his head just drops. And then Ed and I just began to minister him regarding his son. And just began to actually prophesy him, just begin to speak just the love of God about his son. And he was just like, whoa, who are you guys? Why are you even here? So that opens up all kinds of conversation. He just asked, so now I'm going to tell. And really a lot of times that's what it is. Like Jesus said, give me a drink. And I just said, hey, does this date mean anything to you? And it was in the midst of conversation. And as we're ministering to this guy, we come to find out he's actually a sheikh from Saudi Arabia. He's a prince. And we're like, whoa, okay. And at one point in our conversation, we were talking about some of the humanitarian things and then some of the projects that Ed works on with his company. And he goes, we could really use that in some of the areas where we're farming in Sudan. He goes, let me call the president. He literally speed dials the president of Sudan. Now, he didn't get saved that day, but again, that wasn't our goal. Our goal was to love him. Our goal was to bring the love of Christ, and as we did, he saw the love of Christ, and we gave Jesus all kinds of glory because he was like, whoa, what is this stuff? I said, well, we're friends of God. We love Jesus, and he just shares secrets with his friends, and we're his friends. And these are the things that he wants to share with you today. And I mean, literally, the dude was just like, tears are coming out when we started praying for his son. I mean, the dude was just weeping. And he goes, my 3rd boy, too. What about him? I said, well, I don't know. What about him? And he goes, well, he's in school in the U.S. And he said, you know what? He says, you know what? The people in the U.S. are a lot like us. And I'm like, well, what does he mean by that? He goes, well, you know, we grew up being taught that Americans and Christians are evil, wicked people. And he goes, my son loves it in America. And he's got all kinds of friends that are Americans now. And he goes, I've just got my own heart has been awakened to loving American people, so I love you. You know, I mean, it's just so weird, you know. But that's what happens when we just make love the goal. You know, I love that. 1 Corinthians 14, that's one of the things that I will say over and over, time and time again. It says, pursue love, make love the goal, and eagerly desire the spiritual gifts, especially that you might prophesy. Because there's something that happens when we speak words of truth, but we make love the goal, that everything and every word that we release to individuals is about love, that we want to draw them into this arms of love. We want to draw them to the wells of revival. We want to bring that awakening, that reality that doesn't bring guilt, shame, and condemnation, but literally breaks the chains of even generational sins of the past that sets a person free so they can be catapulted into the greatness of who they're called to be. See, that's what we get to do. That's the kind of partnership, that's the kind of co-laboring that God has invited us into. Because it's good news. It's good news. Because this lady goes back into her community, and now they come out and they see Jesus, and now Jesus begins to unpack the good news, and he begins to love individuals. And I believe that even the disciples, they begin to prophesy and encourage those people. And as that was happening, it says that for 2 days they spent with those people in Samaria. When a Jew would literally go, not even through it, they would go around it. Jesus has revival for 2 days right there by the well. Because there's a well of revival that God is bringing. And he wants to use you to be the likeness of Christ that will literally set cities and nations free. It's our time. It's our hour. I'll tell you what, it is our time right now. We don't need to wait anymore. There's such a burning in my heart that what God's about to do is going to literally cause cities to be saved. I mean, a whole city saved. 2 days, Jesus hung out with them. And the whole community came out to hear what he had to say. And they said, we don't believe just what you told us, man. Your testimony was awesome, but now we actually hear for ourselves. This is so cool. And see, that's what happens, that when we approach things with love. And I remember, this is a number of years back now, back in 1998. Long time ago, for some of you. Elizabeth was not born yet. That's true. So anyway, my grandfather had gotten really sick. He got pneumonia, and they thought he was going to die. So my mom gives me this call and says, be praying. It sounds like, you know, they're not giving Grandpa to even live through the night. And I just felt this prompting in my guts, like, man, I just felt like, Lord, if he doesn't know you, don't let him die. I mean, don't let him die, God, without knowing you. And I'm thinking, and then get me a way to get to Arizona to visit him so I can preach if that's the case, Lord. And so as the night went on, we just continued to pray. And then the next morning, my mom calls and says, hey, you're not going to believe this, but Grandpa's sitting up in his bed. And I'm going, oh, okay. So, he doesn't know Jesus. All right, and I'm like, Lord, now you got to work this out. I got to go to Arizona. Got to just love him and just share the good news with him. So I'm trying to figure all this stuff out. A couple hours later, my mom calls and she says, we decided to med flight him back to Wisconsin. We just felt it'd be easier if he was back by the rest of the family. So they fly him to Appleton. The next day, Renee and my son Justin, we get in the car, we go up there, we visit him in the hospital room, we're just sharing with him and loving him and encouraging him and just sharing the simple gospel. Like, you know, here it is, Grandpa. I mean, it's like Jesus died for you, and just really broke down the simplicity of the gospel, and we're just sharing with him with a big smile on our face and loving him. And I said, so what do you say, Grandpa? Do you want to give your life to Jesus? And he's like, no. And I'm going, what do you mean no? That is not the answer I came here for. He goes, the bugs are coming. I said, Grandpa, those aren't bugs. And he goes, no, they're coming. I said, those are not bugs, Grandpa. That's death's doorway, and those are demons. And they're coming. Yes, they are coming. But the only way you're going to get away from it is this reality of Jesus Christ. He will give you life everlasting, and the big bugs will never affect you, will never harm you, will never do anything to you. And so, shared it from beginning to end again. And my grandpa's kind of hard of hearing, so we had to kind of speak really loud in the hospital room, you know. So I'm like, okay, Grandpa, here's how it goes. So you want Jesus or not? And then he goes, yeah, I do. Then the guy in the bed next to him says, yeah, me too. Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy? And so Renee and Justin go over and grab that guy's hands, and we're praying with my grandpa and this guy, and they both get saved. 7 days later, my grandpa dies. Now, this story, as well as in Acts, where it says that, you shall bring the message that you and your whole household shall be saved. So we just began to speak that. So I get asked to speak at his funeral. So I'm thinking, sweet. Jesus, you're going to get a whole bunch of people saved today. So we're speaking that. We're praying that. We're laying on the ground even before the funeral. We're praying. And so here we are at the funeral and just begin to share. And I shared this story about what happened with him. And everyone's kind of like, whoa, that's crazy. And I said, here it is. It's laid out. I said, the reality is that none of us know the time we're going. And death is always knocking. But there's a way to escape that reality, and it's only through and so we just shared this simple gospel. And as we were sharing the gospel, I just asked, all right, who wants in? And like literally almost my entire family gets saved at my grandpa's funeral. My brother, my sister, aunts, uncles. I think there was like a couple cousins that didn't get saved that funeral. They got saved at my grandma's later. But I mean, it was like, I'm like, sweet. Swing that sickle, Jesus. We had harvest time. You know what I'm saying? And see, that's the beauty of it, because, see, God loves people so much. And too often we write them off or we're afraid to say something. Just start conversation. Because it's through the conversation, and as you just become that light bearer and that one with arms of love like Jesus has, I mean, that people will, they'll listen to you. Don't argue, okay? Just don't argue with them. Don't bring religion in. Because even this lady tried to bring religion. You say you worship your word. She's like, this has nothing to do with how you worship. It's about the Father. He's just looking for hearts that will be willing to worship. Because he really died for everybody. Now, it's not always the case that everyone enters into this truth. And I had a crazy visitation one night. Renee and I were, this was early on, probably just a couple years being saved. And we're sitting there praying, and I thought it was just kind of cool because like we're praying together, and yet we could hear the Father's voice together, and just we're having just this dialogue with God. And at one point, all of a sudden, I'm like looking up at the ceiling fan, and all of a sudden the ceiling fan's getting further and further and further away. I'm like, whoa! I'm like, Renee, I'm like leaving my body. This is crazy. I'm serious. It was like crazy. And next thing I know, I'm literally no longer standing in my bedroom. However, my physical body was still in the bedroom, but my spirit man had gone to another place. And now I'm literally standing in this huge like cutout cavern. And I mean, it kind of reminded me of the catacombs in Rome. And all of a sudden, this huge, and I'm talking honking angel, like his hand was about that big. And all of a sudden, he just grabs my hand and just begins to walk me down this path. Now, as we begin to proceed down this hallway, the further and further we got, the more it looked like almost like polished marble. And there was a bright beaming light at the very end. And the further and closer we got, it was like the brighter, and I could hardly even like see. It was so intense as far as brightness. It was this reality of heaven. And as we got up to it, it was like the whole ceiling in that part of it was this whole open thing. And it was like just beaming light coming down. And it was refreshing. I could almost feel like wind coming. But it was like just this light that, it's just so intense. And all of a sudden, at one moment, this dove-like thing lands on my shoulder. I'm like, whoa. And all of a sudden he goes, turn around. And I went, that's how the dove talked. A big, deep voice. It was like, turn around. It wasn't like a little, it was like, turn around. And I'm like, whoa. And I literally catch myself. Because one moment, that was the hallway I just came down. The next moment, it was literally this huge open pit. And I could feel like just this heat and this smell of stench of like sulfur and all of this stuff. And down about 30, 40 feet on this one rock ledge, I saw this guy with the big horns, and he's just going, that's how the devil laughs. So So that's what he was doing. And like literally, he's laughing. I'm like, what is he laughing at? And all of a sudden, I felt this like, what the heck was that? And like, another one. Like, what? And all of a sudden, there was like these bodies streaming past me. And I can see faces. I honestly, today, I can still see the faces. And they're like, help me, help me, help me. As they're coming by, they're just screaming, no, I didn't know. And they're screaming and shouting. And there's tears and the fire. And his laughter just begins to accelerate. And I remember turning to the dove and I said, what is this? And he goes, those are ones that rejected the Son. And I'm thinking, they're like real people. He goes, those are real people that rejected the Son of God. And I mean, for weeks, I literally was wrecked. I mean, I could hardly do anything. As I pondered, I could still hear the screams. I could hear the shouting. I could hear just the eking and the crying out. If they just would have made that decision, even in their final moments, because God makes it possible for all to get saved. It's why he died, so that none would perish. Not some, none. And that vision wrecked me. And it was like, I have to tell people about God. I mean, and it was part of what sent us in the streets. We're doing things, and we started this band, and we're traveling all over the place, just doing, youth rallies to any place that God would open. I mean, everything from hog rallies to whatever. Like, let's just rock and roll and tell people about Jesus. So we did, and it's like, we saw so many people get saved. And see, that's what God wants to do, is he wants to awaken a generation. And you don't necessarily have to have a microphone and a platform. Your platform is your classroom. Your platform is your apartment. Your platform is as you walk into your workplace. See, God is raising up. See, the greatest move of the Spirit that is about to happen is going to take place in the marketplace. Because even here at the well, it was in the middle of the marketplace that Jesus spoke a word that set a woman free, that went into her community. The community came out into the community because they were already in the community. And it was there in the community that they got saved. It wasn't in the church or synagogue. And he hung there 2 days because Jesus' whole heart is to disciple nations. And see, that's part of it too. Is that even as we begin to have those interactions and encounters with people and we begin to share the love of Christ, we've got to find ways to bring them into the fold because, little babies, we can't just leave them on their own trying to fend for themselves. And that's part of what we're trying to establish here is a safe place where people can come to be encouraged, to be equipped, to be set free from those chains of darkness, from addictions and those things that hold people back from seeing the truth of who they're supposed to be. That's why we're here on this campus in this day and this hour. It's why right now we traveled 150,000 miles in the air last year. We'll probably do that and more this year. The reason being is that this is the most exciting time. I just want you to get this. This is the most exciting time in history. And, he's not using a few. He's going to use the many. Because you're going to see people that I will never see. You'll encounter people that I will never encounter. And it's in those places where you encounter people that you're going to bring them into an encounter with the face of God. And as they see the face of God and they see those eyes of fire and unfailing love just spewing out of you, they're going to go, whoa, what is this? It's there where the awakening happens. And as you just continue to love people, sometimes our job is just to plant the seed. That seed of love that goes into someone's heart. Then it might be your job. Now you're going to come over here and you're going to water that seed with more love. And then you're going to come over here and you're going to take that sickle and just zip right through that thing with love. And there you have it. The seed, the watering, the harvest. Paul says, I don't care who does what. I'm just going to do my part, what I'm called to do in that moment in time. Because we're all called. Can I just say that? We're all called to preach the good news. We're all called to bring the good news. We're all called to go into all of our world and be the light of Christ, to preach good news to the poor. We're all called to do that. And make disciples of nations. We're going to heal the sick. We're going to cleanse the leper. We're going to raise the dead. We're going to cast out demons. We're going to do normal Christian stuff. Because I'll tell you what, that's what's going to put Christianity back where it's supposed to be. It's not a religious thing we do on a Sunday. It's a lifestyle and a reality which we walk in day and night. I'll tell you what, that's what God is doing right now, is he's putting a fire inside of this generation that will be burning wholehearted lovers of Christ. And because of that love, they're compelled by love because they hear the voice of the Father, that as they release the word into someone's heart, they're ignited saying, tell me more. I want some of that water. Let me drink. And I love it because it's not just a few. Because in an upper room, it started with 120. That became 3,120 on the day of Pentecost, the day the church was born. And they continue to outreach and love people and share this reality. And so we want to continue to even equip you that. Maybe you've never done that before. Maybe you've never led anybody to Jesus. My prayer for you, and I hope, just make this part of your prayer, that you lead one person to Christ this year. In 2018, lead it one person to Christ. Can you do that? Can you make that part of your prayer, like a goal? That you'll lead one person to Christ this year. Because think about the everlasting change that'll happen. Because then that person leads one, and that person leads one, and that person leads one. And now they say you lead 10, and all of a sudden 10 becomes 100, it becomes 1,000,000 before you know it. And all of a sudden you might find one that's going to be like a Billy Graham or someone like that all of a sudden is like one of the greatest evangelists that gets saved because you just decided to take risk and go do it. When it gets warmer, we're gonna do this, okay? So when it just gets, because it's going to be like -5. It's not fun to go out and evangelize in that. I'm sorry. It just isn't. But come like the end of March, right after a spring break, we'll do some equipping and training in that, and we'll do a time even activating here, and then we'll just go out and go love the community and just see what happens. And we've seen it time and time again where we've gone out for like a half hour. I mean, I was recently in Taiwan, and half of the people had never ever evangelized or ever preached the gospel to anybody. And I said, well, we're going to go do it right now. And so we had 80 people in this particular class. And I said, now we're going to go out. And we went out for 45 minutes. We had 120 people get touched by the love of God during that 45 minutes. I mean, miracles. I mean, the one guy literally had a tumor. He had a thyroid cancer, had a tumor in his throat. And we literally watched it, went away. Like the whole tumor just disappeared. Yeah. There's one lady that's working in the market. And she's got, I don't know exactly what it was, but something really messed up, like tendonitis kind of thing. But it was like a thing sticking out of her elbow. We prayed for that. It just shrunk right up. She was able to get mobility back. And we had like, I'm guessing probably 60 salvations that happened during that time too. I mean, 45 minutes, 60 people get saved because 80 people decided to go take risk and go love the community. And I'll tell you what, we've got that amazing opportunity to do that. And it may scare the hell out of you. That's good because the hell just gets in the way of things anyway. Because we just want the love of God, because that love will empower us. His grace will empower us to be the radiant ones. Because we're just called to arise and shine. Our light's already come. And now we get to be the light. Jesus called us to be the light. It's our day. So I say it again. So come like the end of March, April, we're going to do this. And we're going to go out and love the community and just watch. And then we're going to come back and testify. But my encouragement to you, just begin to pray. Lord, what are you doing today? How can I be part of it? And just see those divine little interactions. And sometimes loving someone is just giving them a smile. Where you just all of a sudden you see that you lighten up their day. And it changes their heart. Sometimes it is just bringing encouragement. Hey, wow, what's going on? Is there a way I can pray for you? Hey, can I have a drink of your water, man? Anyway, whatever. Sarah, could I have you come up and just play a little bit? And the revelation that as we continue to love people and all along the way, because even during this conversation with this lady, I mean, she starts out calling him a Jew, which in a way was kind of like, you're a Jew. And then she changes Jew, and all of a sudden it becomes sir, which is kind of like, okay, I hear where you're coming from. I kind of feel your vibe. And then from that, she said, prophet. So, I mean, like, she's literally like seeing this reality, this revelation of who Jesus is being revealed to her in that moment. And I'll tell you what, that's what happens when we love people. They begin to see it, where all of a sudden at first their fists are up, guards are up. And all of a sudden then they realize that you actually don't have an agenda other than just to love and be kind to them. Hands go down, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, tell me more. Whoa, how did you know that? Oh, you're a prophet, huh? Yeah, and then she goes on to say, hey, this is the Messiah, the Savior of the world. And she has this whole thing just unlocked before her. That's why she was so filled with excitement and zeal. And it was from that place where, I mean, she became an amazing evangelist. I mean, some people believe that she was actually the Saint Fotine, or Fotina, that actually did all kinds of evangelism. In fact, she had a whole family that were evangelists, that even the disciples are the ones that baptized her and actually gave her the name Fotina, which actually means the enlightened one. But after both Peter and Paul were martyred, that's when they actually left that region of Sychar and Samaria, and they actually traveled into Africa, to Carthage. And they began to be light bearers there. And they began to preach the gospel all along the way, and people getting saved and radically changed, and then they too became martyrs. Because they've been apprehended by love. They no longer counted their life their own. That happened to her right there at the well. I mean, when she leaves the water pot saying, Jesus, this is all I got, but I'm going to give it to you because you're worth it. And see, that's all Jesus is looking for. What do you have? I mean, Jesus is just saying, hey, come on. Bring what you have. I mean, David had a stone and a sling. Took down giants. We've got the word of love to take down giants. We can hear the voice of the Father, so we can set people free. The amazing thing that even as we hear his voice and our own hearts set free, and then we just take that testimony and we share our testimony, our story. Because that's all that lady did when she went into the community. She just began to share her story. She didn't preach anything other than her story. There's power in the testimony. Your testimony of how much God loves you. See, he doesn't care where you've come from. He knows where you're going if you've said yes to him. And to me, that's the amazing thing of this gospel of grace, is it empowers us to be more than conquerors. It empowers us to be champions, to be lovers of God, lovers of people, chain breakers.